You're on the air.
What? Can I panic now? Oh, good. Great. What? Okay. All right. We're going to call to order the February 23rd, 2016 Planning Commission meeting. Roll call.
Chair Simpson.
Here.
Sorry. Chair Simpson.
Here.
Vice Chair Griffin.
Here.
Commissioner Flores.
Here.
Commissioner Walker.
Here.
Commissioner Pearson.
Here.
And Commissioners Meyer and Reddick are absent.
Thank you. On the consent agenda this evening, we have the January 12th Planning Commission minutes and the January 26th minutes. Are there any corrections, additions, or a motion for approval?
I moved. I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. All right, before we move into the council liaison announcements, I wanted to mention to those people in the audience that if you wish to testify tonight, we have blue cards in the back, blue sheets of paper, and if you will fill it out and turn it into the commission secretary if you want to speak either under community comments or testify at the public hearing. Also in the back of the room this evening, there is an email sign-up sheet. If you wish to be notified of further or additional planning department activities, you can sign up for the email and be part of the blast. Kirsten will set you up with however they get the mailings or the emailings out to everybody. All right. Do we have a report from the council liaison?
She did not give me one, and I'm not going to steal Brad's thunder because the only thing I can think of is.
Okay, well, don't do that then. All right, staff announcements. Brad?
Thank you. So last Thursday, staff met with the Police Advisory Board and invited them to a public work session with you, the Planning Commission, that's scheduled for March 10th at 7 p.m. On March 1st through the 31st, we're going to release a survey for that recreational marijuana survey that we had talked about, so that'll go out. There has been an interest by the city to get the community gardens on the PC's agenda, and they would like to do it the week of March 22nd, which actually falls on the week of spring break. So I've been asked to poll the commission as to whether or not you're going to be available that week, or if not, then we're just going to push it. But any thoughts?
I'm gone.
You're gone?
I'm gone. 22nd.
And it would be for a public hearing about it?
It would be a public hearing.
I think it's also not fair for the public that week. So just because they might be gone.
Okay. True.
I wanted to cancel my trip to Fort Lauderdale.
We should just push it off, I think.
Okay.
Is there an emergency that requires a rush?
I think it's just a council
Hearing.
priority, so I will.
This is the council asking about the community garden. Is that right?
Right, correct.
Okay. Well, it seems like we have commissioners going to be gone, and we don't know if Commissioner Reddick's going to be available. So I would suggest that we move it to the first meeting in April, if that's
Okay.
possible.
Okay. And then finally, the next step for the industrial land uses is the hearing that is tentatively scheduled before you on April 12th. So I just wanted to kind of put that on your radar. And that concludes my announcements. Although Kirsten has an announcement, but I'm going to let her make it if she would like.
Yay, congratulations.
Exciting.
All right.
And Councilor Kuiper is actually here instead of Councilor Robinson. I checked with her, and she said she didn't have any council liaison announcements, but she's here, present, and taking notes.
Councilor Robinson, I believe, is handling a very large upcoming session, legal session, so she's studying hard for that.
All right. Thank you very much for attending this evening. All right. We are at community comments, and community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda for this evening. I do not have any cards for someone wishing to testify on a community comments, and no one rushing to the table, so we will move forward to new business, which is our public hearing. And I have a script that I need to read. The public hearing on SUB 15-01 Mandel Farm subdivision is called to order. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, 15 minutes, questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. Applicant will have 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each. There will be rebuttal from the applicant with the remainder of their 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. No other comments will be heard from the public or the applicants. Final comments by staff up to 15 minutes. Questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and then discussion by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a date and time certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the Planning Commission Secretary. The chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come forward to speak, please state your name and address for the record. In reaching a decision on the application, the Commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. There are 2 copies of the staff report available in the room this evening. The testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the Commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Boards of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the Commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I would like to ask members of the Commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing.
I am friendly with the Mandel family, known them for many years. I don't feel like it's going to make any difference in regard to my consideration this evening.
I had one ex parte contact last week at the council meeting. Kurt Christensen opposed me expressing concern regarding school capacity. That comment will not affect my ability to make a decision or my ability to participate tonight. Anybody else have any other? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any planning commissioner member's ability to participate? Hearing none, we will ask for the planning staff's report.
Thank you, Commissioner Simpson and Commissioners. So I learned last week that we should be reading out the approval criteria that we judge this against in the public hearing. So I'm going to just go real quickly and let you know that this application was subject to 1612 residential land uses, 1658 clear vision and fence standards, 1660 yard requirements, 1672 procedures for processing development permits, 1694 off-street parking, 16106 transportation facilities, 16110 sanitary sewers, 16112 water supply, 16114 stormwater, 16116 fire protection, 16118 public and private utilities, 16120 subdivisions, 16128 land division design standards, 16142 parks, trees, and open space, 16144 wetland habitat and natural areas, and 16156 energy conservation. So thank you. Tonight, I don't know if this is picking up. I am going to be talking to you about the Mandel Farms subdivision. It's file SUB 1501. It is located at the intersection of Southwest Edie and Southwest Elwert Roads, identified in yellow on the map above. It's approximately 22 acres and would be developed with 86 single-family residential homes under this proposal. As you can see, the site is cut off on the top by Copper Terrace. Oregon's one of the states in this nation that doesn't, actually we don't recognize intervening ownership, so that is still a parcel that's tied to the parent parcel, so there's still one parcel. The applicant's proposal tonight is to develop that 22 sites with 86 single-family homes. The property has split zoning, as you know. Both you and the city council recently rezoned the commercial portion of this property that was up against Elwert to medium-density residential high. So the dwelling units, or I guess the density ranges between our medium-density residential low and medium-density residential high are not that different. So they have to achieve a range between 5.5 dwelling units per acre up to 11 dwelling units per acre, how it's spread out across that. In this case, they're achieving 6.7 dwelling units per acre. All of the homes are, or all of the proposed lots are 5,000 square feet or greater, which is consistent with both zones for a single-family detached dwelling. The minimum dimensions, including the setbacks, will be verified. I will speak briefly to some exceptions that they've asked for under 16-144-030, which is our natural resources chapter. It allows for a 30% reduction of all the setbacks, but they've asked specifically for a 30% reduction to lots 28 through 31, 36, 37, and 53. And basically what it says, the standard says that you have to set aside the required natural resource area, and then if you set aside over and above that area land dedicated to those natural resources and the buffers, then you can reduce your setbacks by 30%. And again, they're only proposing half of that. That would impact the area by 2,034 square feet, and they're proposing tract C to mitigate for that, which is 2,155 square feet. So they're actually providing a little more than what they're actually impacting. And so we're going to recommend that you go along with that. You can look at the plot plan, and you'll see that those are some odd-shaped lots, and so that setback will actually help them fit some homes onto those lots. Washington County Engineering has reviewed and approved access spacing modification to Southwest C Terrace onto Southwest Edie Road. I'm going to talk about streets. And before I talk about them, I'm going to show you a proposed street plan. And so what they're proposing, as you can see on the left side of your screen, is Southwest Elwert Road. I'm sorry, Southwest Edie Road, and at the bottom of the screen is Southwest Elwert, and then the top road that cuts between lots 1 and 24, I think that is 24, is Copper Terrace. And so they're proposing that Southwest C Terrace down below to serve the area that's on the west side of the natural corridor. Because of intersection spacing requirements, they were required to approach the city or the county engineer to determine whether or not they had enough spacing. The county engineer did make a recommendation to approve it. He looked at it. He looked at site distance. They'll be asking for additional site certification once the intersection has been constructed, but he was comfortable with the location of it. So the proposed subdivision would create 3 new streets, and then it would improve access, make street improvements to Southwest Copper Terrace, Southwest Edie Road, and Southwest Elwert, and they would be constructed to the standards that have been identified in our adopted transportation system plans. They'll have to get a facilities permit from Washington County to do the improvements to Southwest Elwert and Southwest Edie Road. There has been a question about the fee in lieu. So I don't have a pointer, but if you look at the northwest portion of the site, they're proposed, and the county has accepted, not to make the full improvements of sidewalk and curb and gutter there because of the topography and the fact that ultimately that intersection at Edie and Elwert needs major reconstruction. It needs a lot of work, and it's cost prohibitive to lay all of that cost onto this developer. So what the county has asked for is that the developer provide a cost estimate, and that cost estimate is looked at by the county, and they assess it based on the cost of projects that they do, and they say whether or not it's a fair cost estimate, and then they assess a fee in lieu of to the applicant. So you pay for those improvements that you're not making that'll go towards future intersection improvements. With the exception of, they have asked for, and we have required in the conditions, that they illuminate that intersection for safety. Right now there's currently no lighting at that intersection, so this would add some lighting at that intersection. And Bob, the city engineer, is here to speak further to that if you have additional questions about that. 14 lots will have access onto Southwest Copper Terrace. All other lots would take access from within the internal streets. So the lots that are on Copper Terrace, up there, lots 1 through 8 would have access onto Copper Terrace. And then there's about 5 lots in between the proposed Street A and proposed Street B, where you would also have access onto Southwest Copper Terrace. There's a proposed pedestrian bridge that crosses at the halfway point between the natural resource area. That's the area that has been looked at as being the area that would be the minimal impacts to the area, and it provides pedestrian and bicycle connectivity through the site. So those intersection improvements down at Edie and Elwert aren't necessarily needed. If people are coming down Elwert Road, they can cut through the subdivision across the natural resource area and back onto the sidewalk system. In addition, the applicant has proposed a soft trail system on that east side of the ravine area there as part of their open space, which would make the connection over to Southwest Elwert, or Southwest Edie a lot quicker. Utilities and phasing. The applicant is proposing a phased development. It's a light watermark on this plan, but I'll show it to you in another plan later. They're proposing to extend existing public utilities. Some of those utilities would come out of Southwest Elwert Road and into the development for the portions that are east of the natural resource area. And then all other utilities would come from existing stubs that are out in Southwest Copper Terrace Road. And they would be pushed through the development to the western boundary, and it would also be required to cross at the pedestrian crossing. So you'll have utilities hanging under that pedestrian bridge for the purposes of looping and making sure that there are services stubbed to the property lines as required by our code. The natural resource areas on site have been delineated, professionally delineated by a natural resource wetland scientist and biologist. Clean Water Services has generally concurred and issued a stormwater, service provider letter in I guess response to that assessment. And so the applicant is not proposing to impact this area except with the pedestrian bridge and then some buffer improvements that they'd be required to mitigate for that soft path area. And then we come to, we require all subdivisions to provide a minimum of 5% open space on site. And we don't count the natural resource areas that are set aside. This 5% is for the benefit of the development. And they propose to do that in 5 tracks, a series of 5 tracks, and each one of these tracks explains the size and the description of where it is and what they've proposed. It totals to 8.5% of the net developable area, and it's shown here. The open space tracks are down at the southwest corner, adjacent to the pedestrian bridge, up in the northeast corner. I'm sorry, the southeast corner, across from the Ridges schools, and they're putting a pedestrian connection in between lots 15 and 16 to make sure that people within the development can get access into that open space as well. And then they have some small open space track D over at the bottom of the lots that are adjacent to Southwest Edie Road. They'll be required to plant visual corridors along Southwest Edie Road and Southwest Elwart Roads. They're required to have a minimum tree canopy in the residential zones of 40% as proposed, and they kept quite a few trees within the vegetated corridor. Our code allows you, for any trees that you save, you can count twice that canopy towards your minimum canopy requirement. And then you can, in a residential subdivision, you can also count the street trees towards that canopy requirement. So they're, with all the trees that they would be planting, they would achieve a 59% canopy coverage of the area. Street trees are required along all frontages. Speaking further to the open space, we asked the applicant to speak more to the programming of that open space. You know, in my mind, a lot of this is passive open space. It's not necessarily active, but our code is not prescriptive as to what programming has to be in the open spaces. So this is the area up by Southwest Copper Terrace across from the schools. This is the area at Track D that's down along Southwest Edie Road, also adjacent to the natural resource area, and it has a soft path pedestrian trail through it. Community concerns that we heard, and they primarily came through the neighborhood meeting that the applicant had, and we received one phone call from Joe Broadhurst, but he didn't submit comments. He just had questions about the application. So we provided comments to him on those. Traffic was primarily one of the large things that we hear, and we hear that in every development. So for this development, they have a traffic engineer from Lancaster Engineering who put together a traffic analysis, and it shows that 65 a.m. peak hour trips, meaning between the hours of 7 and 9, 5 and 7, would generate 65 trips from this development, and then in the evening p.m. peak hour, 4 to 6, was still 5 to 7, would be 86 p.m. peak hour trips. They have to, the way that they're proposing to mitigate that is to make all the improvements that they're required to do, the street widenings, the dedications, the pedestrian improvements throughout the site and the development, and then the lighting to the Edie and Elwart intersection, as well as the payment for the fee in lieu of for those improvements that they're not making all the way to that intersection. I'm almost done. So natural resource protection, all natural resources have been delineated and will be improved and protected for clean water services standards. I talked about open space, and then finally I wanted to touch on school capacity. There was discussion about school capacity. Sherwood schools, I spoke to a representative of the Sherwood schools. They're near, at, or above capacity, but it varies throughout the district, and the state law does not allow cities to deny development based on school capacity. So the comment I received from him was they're working on a facilities plan, and if in the course of the next couple of years their enrollment exceeds the capacity of the schools, then they'll be looking to install modulars, and they'll be looking to address that through a long-range capital facilities plan. With that, staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve the proposed subdivision subject to the findings and conditions of approval in the staff report that was made to the Planning Commission. I do have some amendments, Scribner's errors that Commissioner Simpson has provided to me, and then some issues that we'll propose to clear up after we get through your questions. And I'm just going to leave this up in case the public wants to refer to any of the code. So, any questions?
So before we open up for public testimony, does anybody have any questions for staff?
Yes, I have a couple.
Okay.
Chicken Creek, and I love the name, runs right through the heart of this. Is floodplain considerations been addressed?
Yes, there's no proposed development within the floodplain, not actually within the waterway or the corridor at all.
Okay. Second question, the developer builds the streets.
Correct.
Will they remain private streets run by the homeowners association, or will the city eventually take them over and make them public streets?
All the streets in here would be public streets, built to a public standard, with the exception of when your plan, you'll see that public alley. Staff is proposing that that be a private alley, simply because that would require our folks to maintain that small strip of land that's providing access to 3 people. so to 3 properties. So we have proposed that that access be private and that any access to lot 78 be from that private alley as opposed to the C terrace.
Okay, so that would be homeowners association's responsibility, and they would be well aware of the fact that this is their responsibility?
Correct. So as part of the final plat, we'll be looking at notes that they might that they might put on the face of the plat that indicates what's public and private, and we'll be looking at draft CCNRs that ensure the city doesn't enforce CCNRs, but we like to make sure that the CCNRs are drafted in such a way that the homeowners are responsible for maintaining, in this case, any private land set aside for the purposes of access, or if they had a private stormwater quality facility or any of the private open space tracts. The responsibility to maintain that is theirs. You might have noticed up here on Langer or the Century Boulevard, so that greenway is actually owned by a homeowners association, so they actually paid for the replacement of the equipment there. But
I
it's
noticed.
open.
And all of the open space tracks identified are going to be privately owned by the homeowners association, correct?
Correct.
So they'll already have,
Bridge and all that.
Correct.
they already have a maintenance situation.
We'll ask for access easements for anything that, pedestrian access, sewer and water access for anything that has utilities in it to make sure that, for example, they're not meeting block link standards because they can't because of the topography and the resource area. So they're proposing to mitigate that by providing the pedestrian connection across the creek area. So we're going to make sure that there's a public access easement over there so that the homeowners can't stop the public from using it.
Question about the AM/PM trips that we just now heard was 5 to 7. Who determines that, Bob?
That's IT manual, basically, and I'm
IT
going to make
manual mean?
the International Traffic Engineers Manual, and I want to make a clarification. I misspoke. AM peak is from 7 to 9. Usually, it relates to commuter traffic. The PM peak is from 4 to 6, generally speaking. With this, we did ask Lancaster to look at the difference between the trips generated between what was initially going to be zoned and what the new zoning was. And the trip count is significantly different. It would be significantly less with the residential compared to the initial zoning.
When it was neighborhood commercial, which is one of the things we discussed back when we
Correct.
changed the zoning on that.
So,
I was just concerned with that timing. It didn't make any sense, but now it does. So,
okay.
which makes much more sense. Okay.
Russell, you had a couple of questions?
Nope, answered.
All right.
Good.
I had just one point of clarification. When I was reading the staff report, I just want a clarification that Washington County is requesting that the street improvements not occur next to the natural resource area, but that is only the natural resource area at the intersection of Elward and Edie, and that they are going to do the southern connection of the sidewalk. Even though it's a natural resource area, they will do the sidewalk all the way from lot 76 through to the next development to the south.
That's correct. So Daybreak was required to stub those improvements because the topography's less there. When you get to this other corner, it drops off immediately as you step off the road. You're going down into a giant ditch. So
Right. I just wanted to make clarification that even though Washington County said not next to the natural resource area, they only meant next to Elward and Edie, not next to the southern connection.
that's correct.
All right.
I'm
And
sorry.
one other question. The soft path that we keep talking about, is that something that's ADA compliant, or is it not built to standard?
Yeah, I would assume that the applicant would want to speak to that in
Okay,
their
I will
application.
hold my question till then.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I would just say that I do ask Craig to revise his engineering comments. So this is an revised Exhibit B, which are the engineering comments, and it just took out some language that at the time it's not relevant. The engineers and the planners, we have to talk about findings versus conditions, and so we're working on getting better comments from engineering to make sure that we can plug them into our staff report seamlessly. No, nothing substantive, correct.
Just engineers speaking in full sentences.
All right, if there are no further questions for staff, we will go into the applicant's presentation, and I have MimiAux. I probably butchered that, of AKS.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mimi Dukas.
Oh boy, I was really wrong, wasn't I?
Could be my handwriting, too, so I'll give you credit on that one. I am with AKS Engineering representing the applicant this evening, which is Venture Properties. I do appreciate staff's presentation. There is a bit of repetition in mine since we don't coordinate these presentations ahead of time, and I do want to save time during rebuttal, so I'll try and move through mine fairly efficiently and not bury you down with a lot of repetition. So, as staff said, here is the site. It is at the southeast corner of Southwest Edie Road and Southwest Elward. This is the edge of the city limits and the current urban growth boundary. So there is a rural edge to the north and to the west. So zooming in, we have Edie Road, Elward, Copper Terrace, and then we've got the two schools over to the east. The roadways that we have surrounding the property, we have two Washington County facilities. Edie Road is a Washington County collector, and Elward is a Washington County arterial roadway. Copper Terrace is a City of Sherwood facility, and it is a neighborhood route. And as staff pointed out, we do have split zoning across the property, but it is all residential now, so that's good news. We have a combination of medium-density residential low and medium-density residential high. In an odd configuration, but it works for the site. And as you have probably sorted out, all our plans have been rotated, so you have to tilt your head just to the left to really get your bearings with everything. So we apologize for that, but it is the ability to zoom in on the site to give you the most detail. As staff pointed out, this is our layout, and we have 4 phases. Those are color-coded, so you can understand it. It is a unique piece of property. It is bifurcated by several things. That tributary to Chicken Creek, we have an existing stormwater facility that was constructed with the school construction. We have Copper Terrace that splits the site as well. So we end up with several islands across the site in some strange shapes, and that led to creativity when it came to the layout. And we worked hard to create a sense of community for all these disparate parts. So we are proposing 86 single-family detached homes. All the lots are 5,000 square feet. We are requesting that reduced rear yard setback on 7 of the lots that are backing up to the natural resource area. We have mitigated for that with some additional open space area. We are not proposing and not permitted to have any lot access directly onto Edie Road or Elward. And so all the access is internal. We do have that one small area of alleyway that accommodates a tight spot within the site. We will be doing those frontage improvements along Edie and Elward, except at the corner. And I appreciate Commissioner Simpson's clarification that it does extend, those improvements will extend all the way south along Elward. And we do have a detailed open space system. Technically, we are required as a subdivision to have 5% of the site as open space. We are providing 8.6 of our net site area. The riparian corridor comes out of that net calculation, so when you really look at the entire site in totality, 30% of the gross site area is within natural area and open space. So walking through that open space system, this is, again, the site with all the phases. We began with that tributary to Rock Creek. That is protected by Clean Water Services. We did add a few little areas around the edges to accommodate the mitigation for those rear yard setback reductions. But then we started laying in the open space areas. We have 4 fairly concentrated areas of open space. They are more passive, as staff has pointed out, but they are landscaped and they are improved. They have benches, and most importantly, they are interconnected. So we have a pedestrian system that will hopefully pull this community together and provide a good network. It is a combination of hard surface, sidewalks and trails, and also a soft surface. The only way that we could get a trail connection on the west side of the stormwater facility is to do a soft trail within the Clean Water Services vegetated corridor. That is not permitted to be a hard surface. So that section is a soft path and is not ADA accessible. But there are full sidewalks along the public streets, and the remainder of the trail system is a hard surface and accessible. So within these four open space facilities, we have the one to the north is probably the most unique. That includes a picnic shelter. We did change out the image up in the upper right-hand corner to more accurately reflect the scale of that proposed design. But we thought that that was the right place to put a facility like that, where it's adjacent to the school and could serve as a spot for families to wait for children as they're coming out of school. As I said, it also includes landscaping, some picnic tables, and some passive amenities. The remaining open space facilities have benches, landscaping, and the trail system. And you can see in this image where the soft path is along along the west side of that open space facility, and then the accessible hard path is along the east side. This shows Tract H, which extends all the way from our pedestrian bridge over to Elwert. And so that has the trail connection, allows for connectivity from the bridge all the way back over to Elwert. It has a combination of picnic tables, benches, trash cans, and landscaping. So that is an overview of the project. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. We do have our team here this evening. We are comfortable with the conditions of approval. We appreciate staff's help. This has been an iterative process. The design has definitely evolved as we've gone through it, and we do think it's a better result because of that. And we request approval of the application.
All right, thank you. Before you leave, does Planning Commission have any questions for the applicant before we call for public testimony?
Yeah, I have a few.
Yep.
I did read it, and indications are clear that this is hardly what I would not call a complete proposal. And the staff also pointed that out, which is why there are a lot of conditions to be met. I guess this is a question kind of for the staff too. I assume that the developer will be in constant consultation with the staff in terms of meeting the conditions that you propose that they meet. And if they fail to meet those conditions, what will that do if we approve based on the assumption that they were going to meet the conditions?
We would take them to code compliance. And we do work with them at every step of the way. So from this point forward, there are general conditions that they have to continually meet. There are conditions that have to be met at each stage of the platting, prior to making any public improvements, prior to grading permits, prior to building permits. So we do have, for lack of a better term, a hammer to hold them responsible at every juncture, and then we can hold up final occupancy on anything. Any of the outstanding or long-term general conditions that go unmet or are met and then subsequently violated later would be handled through code compliance.
And I'll also add into this that, first of all, it's not uncommon in a subdivision, especially this size, to have conditions, and that's why you have those conditions. And then also by law, or by law, we condition things. We can't condition things unless we are reasonably certain that they can be met. So all of the conditions that staff has imposed, they're reasonably certain that they can be met. They can't condition something that they're not pretty certain can be met some way or another. So that I don't think there's a big risk or concern that they've conditioned something in here that the applicant can't meet.
So my question back to you then, and I see you nodding your head, so I already know the response. The conditions imposed by the staff, you do not consider sufficiently onerous to cause you to not do this?
No, we've reviewed the conditions of approval. We think they match what's currently being proposed, and we are comfortable moving forward.
Just clarifying.
Sure, appreciate it.
All right,
I know I'm out of order, but what's a soft surface path?
so
Fair enough.
we will take questions under proponent and opponent testimony. They can come up and ask questions, and then you'll have a chance to rebut. You have 23 minutes left over to rebut, and unless staff wants to quickly respond to the
A soft surface path is like a bark trail or something that is not concrete or AC pavement.
And the condition that it be soft surface is because Clean Water Services does not want anything else, no more impervious surfaces within their natural corridor.
Correct.
Just,
And
yes.
that's just the north side? It's only the north side, right? Right.
West side, yeah.
Or I'm turned around.
I know. I was going to compliment you at the beginning of the presentation because north was oriented up, and then you turned it. And in my world, every map, north is up. But yes.
Actually,
this is actually the east
at the
side.
neighborhood meeting, we actually turned the boards sideways so that north would be up because it was just far too confusing.
Yeah. So yeah. So the west side of that, based on Clean Water Services requirements, is a pervious surface.
From the bridge to Edie Road, that segment is a soft path. And then actually, that little diagonal connection on Elwert Road, I can't point, I don't think. Can I? You see my mouse? No. Yes, that portion is also soft path.
Just this part here,
Yep.
and then that part all the way up there.
Correct.
Anything that's the side of this area.
I have another question, sorry.
Yeah.
The natural area that the creek runs through, et cetera, who maintains that?
That is going to be owned by the city, and Clean Water Services controls the long-term maintenance of it. There is a maintenance period. The applicant will be required to install the enhancement plantings. Clean Water Services requires that to all be brought up to lovely standards, quite frankly. And there is, I believe, a 3-year maintenance period that 2-year period that the applicant is responsible for, and then it's turned over to the city if it's sufficiently stable.
Thank you.
All right. Then we will
Great.
ask for proponents or opponents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we have an opportunity for persons in favor of the application to submit testimony. I do not have any blue cards, so if you wish to testify at this time, go ahead and step up and bring your blue cards forward. And Tony, you can go ahead and come on up. He is not checked proponent or opponent, but
Yeah.
we welcome you to testify tonight.
Yeah, Anthony Bevel, Southwest Lindley. I live very close to this proposed development, and it is a large development. Saying that traffic is not going to be drastically impacted by this development may be, well, I don't believe that to begin with. Right up the street, within a half a mile, you have another smaller development going in, 16 two-story buildings. Across the street on Edie, you have property for sale, and I don't know what's going to go in there. Will there be another development like this, or going to have? What are we going to have there? We don't know. So you've got a high school going up on Edie Road. You've got property that's for sale. You've got homes that are being built there right now. So that, I'm not buying that. It doesn't wash in my mind that this development, it's a good plan, it is. But what I'm getting to is the Elward and Edie Road, that little intersection, that has to be so well thought out, not to increase the problems that are there right now. And I know about them. I live very close by them. I ride my bike there all the time. So, you know, I'm very aware of it. But what I really wanted to, I read a little bit of this, and I'm not a city planner, so I don't know, you know, well, the ins and outs, the findings and the conditions, I guess, have addressed some of these. But, you know, on page 37, you come to a sentence where it said, city and county engineers have agreed that the dedication along the entire frontage are required, but that full improvements would not be proportional to the impact of this development. So is this addressed in the conditions? I mean, that's a question I have as a person who is not a planner. Then, okay, where's this other one? Okay, these page 53, these trails and pathways serve as connections around and through the neighborhood, due in part to the adjustment for the lack of sidewalks on the segments of Southwest Edie and Elward around the development. So, again, lack of sidewalks there. Is that going to be addressed? Then I have, okay, we saw the pretty pictures up there of the nice little canopy and, you know, people having fun in this development, and I'm sure they will. Staff is concerned that applicant, this is page 54, staff is concerned that the applicant does not propose any play structures, active play courts or exercise equipment within the development, limiting the recreational opportunities. So is that going to be addressed? Okay, and here's something that I found really very hard to understand. Southwest Edie Road and Southwest Elward are county roads, granted. According to comments received, and this is on page 36, sorry I'm bouncing around, I'm an off-the-cuff guy. According to the comments received from the county, Southwest Elward Road is dedicated as an, and in quotation marks, enhanced major street bikeway. Yikes, that's pretty scary. If, you know, if you're pretty scary to me. So I'm just wondering, are these issues, are they going to be addressed under the conditions and all? And when it, yeah, I guess that's it then. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I do not see anybody else coming in as proponent or opponent or other. All right, then we will ask for rebuttal from the applicant. And then when you, for the record, Michael, would you give your name and address for the record?
Michael Ard. I'm a professional engineer with Lancaster Engineering, 321 Southwest 4th Avenue, Suite 400, Portland, Oregon. I'm also actually a Sherwood resident. My son will be going to Laurel Ridge Middle School next year.
Nice.
So several of Mr. Bevel's concerns are actually addressed within the conditions of approval, as we've discussed. And let's see if we can go through these one by one. I'm also going to bounce around a bit, so bear with me on that one. The comment about the sidewalks and along Edie and Elwert and the internal pedestrian connections, I think that is staff's analysis, that the design accommodates pedestrian connectivity with, even though there is going to be a gap in the short term along the sidewalk improvements along Edie and Elwert. So that's been accommodated, and I think that's staff's analysis. Then there was staff's comment about there are no play structures within the development. This was something that we did discuss with staff, and we certainly discussed it within the development team. We do think with the proximity of the school facility, that is such a good asset in terms of play structures and active play space, and that with our natural area and the riparian corridor, it was more appropriate to have that as the key identity for how open space functions for this community. So that was an active decision, and there's also, quite frankly, the noise factor of active play space. It is something that within community design you need to account for the noise that happens when you have a play structure. And with the school facility right across the street, it's a great opportunity to accomplish both things with active and passive play space. I'm going to have Mike address some of the transportation impacts and the significance of that.
Thanks, Mimi. In Tony's comments, I heard him talking about traffic being massively impacted in the vicinity by this site project, and I want to provide a little bit of context regarding that. We didn't indicate that traffic will be minimally impacted by this proposed development. It is a moderate scale residential development, but the impacts were studied and they were found to be acceptable. So the intersections and the roadways in the site vicinity meet the applicable performance standards of Washington County and the city of Sherwood. In particular, there was concern expressed regarding the intersection of Edie at Elwert. And I'll point out that because most of the site is massed around Copper Terrace and the primary destinations are to the east on Edie Road and to the south on Elwert Road, there isn't a whole lot of traffic from the site that actually passes through the intersection of Edie at Elwert. And in particular, of the 65 AM trips that are generated by the site, just 14 would pass through that intersection. During the PM, of the 86 trips, 20 of them pass through that intersection. So the impacts to Edie at Elwert in particular are fairly minimal. It's about 3% of the intersection capacity that's used by this. It is an intersection that's approaching capacity, but with this development in place, it still meets all the applicable performance standards. It is also an intersection that in the future is going to require some improvements, as the city is well aware.
You know what the level of service is going to be at that intersection once this project is
Yes,
completed?
either with or without this development, it's actually at level of service C during the morning peak hour and level of service E during the evening peak hour.
Okay, thank you. And that is regardless of whether or not this is...
That's correct, yeah.
This application goes through or not, the level of service doesn't change, but...
Correct.
It's to state the obvious, the people further south on Copper Terrace will see the impact more than that intersection of Elwert and Edie,
Yes,
because they're going to go through Copper Terrace and hit Handley and go that direction. Correct? Or Edie Road.
They go in multiple directions, but
Right.
certainly there are impacts to the south there as well.
Okay.
Have you personally driven through there at 8 in the morning on Edie Road currently?
Yes, I have. Living in this community, I go through that area pretty frequently.
So we can't take audience yelling from. If you want to testify, we can have you turn in a blue card.
Anything about that other than that we're improving conditions?
Are there any
Existing.
questions for the applicant? And especially since we've got the traffic engineer up here. I'm sorry, did you have further rebuttal? I'm sorry.
No, I think that generally covers, I think, most of Mr. Bevel's questions, and we're happy to answer any other questions you have.
Actually, can you explain what enhanced major street bikeway is?
That's a classification by Washington County. It's an aspirational goal at this point. Obviously, there is not a nice enhanced bikeway facility on that. But what it means is in their long-range plan, they have programmed that should be an enhanced bikeway. So at some point, they do, or theoretically, plan to make that improvement.
So will the half-street improvements you do on Elwert meet the standards of an enhanced major street bikeway? Sorry.
The bikeway would not go in at this time. Right-of-way typically is required for the future street, half-street cross-section, I should say. So the improvements that are programmed in are kind of Washington County's purview. They ask for what dedications are necessary, and we would provide that as part of the development.
So if I can restate this, so what you're going to make dedications and set aside enough land to be able to build the road, and what you're building at this time is the standards that Washington County requires at this level, but not considered a major street bikeway.
Correct. There's no actual bike facility that we would be putting in. We respond to Washington County's request for any necessary dedications.
And improvements.
Right.
And how wide's the sidewalk going to be in this on Elward and Edie?
Either of us know that off the top of our heads.
It's 8 feet, isn't it?
It's 5 feet on Edie and 6 on, which one? Elward? Elward, okay.
6 feet. Okay.
Still keeping the four-way stop there at Edie and Elward.
Yes. Yeah, that is assumed to be always stop control still.
All right. Any other questions of the applicant?
I just have one. These street names, they're going to be, are they going with A lane or is this just
Those
a
are
placeholder?
Those are just placeholders.
Oh, good.
Yeah, yeah. It's remarkably hard to come up with street names that aren't
That haven't
boring
already
or
taken.
I know,
weird.
but A, B, C, and D are not it.
No, they're not. That is
Kelly
part
must
of-
have some relatives or somebody that she can, there we go.
It'll be
somebody.
part of our final plat.
And the Mandel family must have lots of relatives.
And we do it within, I think it's still within our code. If it's not within our code, it's in the municipal code. Have specific kind of criteria for how
Historic name.
yes, how to name streets.
Right. Excellent.
We've looked at the traffic at Edie and Elward. Have we looked at the traffic at the other end of each of these, where you have, I guess, Edie would hit 12th and Sherwood, and Elward would hit 12th and Sherwood, and how that's going to be affected by all these people living there?
Our traffic impact studies are scoped fairly early on in the project based on the number of trips that are generated and based on the major intersections that would be impacted. In this case, the intersections that we studied included Edie at Elwert, Copper Terrace at Edie, the major school access on the north side of the campus at Copper Terrace at Handley, Elwert at our proposed site access to that western side, that new
C Terrace.
Yeah, C Terrace, and then Elwert at Handley. So we did not extend that analysis down to the intersection of Meineke at Highway 99W or the intersection of Edie Road at Sherwood Boulevard. By the time we get there, the traffic volumes are extremely high, and this development represents a very tiny fraction of the traffic going through there.
But adds to that.
There certainly
very
are
traffic
impacts
high.
there, yes.
And so what is the requirement for how far you normally check something like that?
That starts to get down to what I think would be an engineering judgment of whether or not the impact would be significant enough to cause an issue where improvements would be required. Usually what we're looking at in the base model for anything is a 480 T count, average daily total traffic count. And this is far below that as far as an impact. I would say if an intersection is impacted by more than 10% or 5% of traffic count, then I would start looking at, okay, show me how this is really going to be reviewed, because at 5 or 10% it does make a difference, and the counts on this are well below that.
So you have in fact looked there to see that they're well below that.
From an engineering judgment standpoint, yes. I take a look at what we have in the TSP as a starting point. We have that information on how, traffic counts are going in these in those particular intersections. The type of traffic that this particular item, this subdivision is going to develop down there, again, it's very small. It wouldn't be showing anything that would require a mitigation from my standpoint.
Yeah.
At Highway 99.
At Highway 99. The traffic counts are high. I agree. The traffic backups are high. This is such an incremental, small amount, it doesn't change the overall functioning of that thing, nor could I actually, based on that, tell them that they'd have to do an improvement. I have to look at something else that would be significant that would force that issue.
The other related factor is that the city, in their transportation system plan, is tasked with providing an adequate transportation system for the development that can occur within the zoning that's allocated. So in this case, this property was developable at a higher density than what we did. We scaled that back, which means that our impacts are reduced at those locations, but ultimately the impacts of those are supposed to be covered through the transportation system plan and the city's capital improvement plan, as well as obviously cooperation with ODOT.
Can I have one more explanation for the record? And I know staff will probably be able to provide it very readily. Brad's wondering, oh my, what is she going to pull up with now? I think Anthony and the other people are due. Why is it a fee in lieu of the intersection of Elwert and Edie? And in my opinion, it kind of goes to the rough proportionality, because we can't, a development that impacts an intersection at 3 to 5% can't be expected to develop a multi-million-dollar
Improvement.
and it goes back to state law. And I was looking to Brad because he's got Nolan, Dolan, and the third one, which provides the rough proportionality that says we, as a city, we can't mandate a multi-million-dollar project, street improvement, or any other public improvement that is not proportionate to the impact that they're creating to the community.
But they pay the fee into a fund, so when that time comes, they've paid their portion.
They've paid their portion into a pot, and when everybody in the neighborhood pays enough into the money, into the pot, in theory, Washington County has enough to do the whole intersection. So, Brad, if you could clean up and put into actual language what I was trying to get at, or Bob.
You did say it very good. However, this is identified in the city's and the county's TSP as a major intersection with major improvement requirements going along with that. I don't think development in that entire area, because of the traffic, the flow through traffic, the commuter traffic that goes through there, would ever be able to pay a fee in lieu of that would equate to the type of improvement necessary to handle that type of load on that intersection. So yes, they'll pay a fee in lieu of. It's not going to be, 6 different people are developing out there, they'll take 1/6 of it. It won't even come close to touching the cost that's required to develop that improvement. That's going to be a county project that's going to take a lot of funds, probably state funds, county funds, federal funds to make it work.
And nothing we as a city can control when that happens.
We do have voice with the county. We can get it on the MISTIP funding programs. We probably will. The fact that we did the Sherwood West concept plan raised the level of awareness to that, the road and its issues. We have had some unfortunate incidences out there, deaths. That brings it up in the county's mind. We are going through with a current roundabout improvement along the road. That's the first step. The county, that road is a higher priority on the county's map. It shows up. It's not ever going to be sitting out there languishing forever. It will be done. It needs to be done.
And this development is paying their share towards the improvement.
They will.
When it happens.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they're just paying it in a fee in lieu of doing it, but they're doing all the other street improvements to connect the sidewalks on the rest of Elwert.
Correct. And some of those, just to let you know, some of those improvements may not exist once we get done doing the road improvement of Elwert. They'll be gone. It's just the nature of the beast. But that's years down the way.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, all of that is correct. They're also going to be paying, maybe you might get some credits, I'm guessing, with some improvements that you're doing, but transportation system development charges, transportation development taxes that are intended to pay for those incremental impacts to off-site intersections and things like that. So that's how we fund improvements that can't be funded by any one project people are paying into the transportation system development charge, the transportation development tax, as well as the major street transportation improvement fund, the MISTIP. I'm not saying that right. So that's kind of, so for the people at home or in the audience that get frustrated when development doesn't fix an intersection, there's all these pieces that are put into place to help fund that when it's needed, or if a project is so huge that they are in fact breaking the system and it is proportional, then they would be required to mitigate and make those intersection improvements at that time.
All right, thank you. So I have one other question, and this is just from an aesthetic point. Lots 76 through 78 are 3 lots that, because of the orientation of it'll be a private alley and Elwert, the front yard's going to be facing Elwert, but the rest of the development and the neighboring developments are going to be facing with the front yard to the interior of the site. Did anybody catch that and have any questions?
Technically, the front yard will face Elwert, but the homes will actually front just like the other homes to the north. So the garage will be to the public alley, and the front door will be to the public alley. So it's an alley. It's also the front door. It functions
like a street,
kind of.
Okay,
But it's 3 lots. It's in an awkward spot. It's adjacent to Elwert, so it meets the idea of alley, but we also want that community design. And putting your back to the neighborhood doesn't make a lot of sense either. So,
Right.
And there's the visual corridor. There's all the enhancement that goes along Elwert, which is really functioning as buffering, and that's an odd thing for your front door to have. So really, functionally, it should face into the community.
So the public alley will act as their front door, even though it says the front lawn will be the.
Correct.
Okay, I just want a
It sounds like they
clarification.
have 2 fronts.
Yeah, because a lot of these, there's a couple other, like this whole, I'm pointing on my thing, all the ones that are on Edie Road, see, they have, they're called pass-through lots where they have frontages on 2 streets.
Mhm.
And so 76 through 78, they were just going to have they have to have the front yard on Elwert, but the front door is going to be on the private street.
Well, those are actually traditional lots. So they will just be having their front door to Southwest A lane.
Right, I was just saying they're pass through, the same thing where you pick the front yard on A lane.
Right.
But by code, we're picking the front yard on Elwert for those 3 lots.
Right.
And I just thought it was a little.
Yep, and
Unique.
it felt odd for the home builder too. So that's why they're going to have the front doors facing into the community.
Okay.
I have a question about the access off Elwert to Sea Terrace. The sidewalk that goes past 79 down through 86, which is how you're going to improve it down to a certain point. What's at the end of that? Does that slope at all? I'm just thinking of kids getting on skateboards and going down into the green abyss and ending up at the bottom of that intersection. I'm thinking about, is the sidewalk going to have it's not really going to be used because it's going to end at the phantom zone, right? What's going to be down at the end of that, and does it slope at that end?
on track
What
T.
area are you talking about?
This, you know what I'm talking about, right by 86, 85?
Oh, on Elwert.
It ends at the
Does
water
Bob know?
quality facility. So that dark green area is the water quality facility.
Right. Where does the sidewalk end?
I'm going to have the engineer
Okay.
explain how that's
And if he
gonna
could start by
transition.
having his name and address for the record, thank you.
All right, name's Alex Hurley with AKS Engineering.
Okay.
So, I guess if you could clarify exactly what you're talking about
The
there.
sidewalk behind 79 all the way down through 86.
How does it end?
Yeah, well, how does it
Oh.
end? I'm thinking about public safety. I'm thinking about
Yes.
kids. I think about somebody riding their bike out on this beautiful sidewalk on Elwert and heading towards Edie intersection, and then what's at the end of that? Is that
So
something
there
that
will
the
be
city
a type
has to?
3 red and white barricade.
Okay, at the end of that.
Yeah,
That's
and
what's
that's a
gonna be.
requirement
It's
for
just gonna-
county. Yep.
And what's directly on the other side of that barricade? Is there still more, or does it drop off? I'm just thinking about,
be a
does it
gra-
slope down to that
It will be a
barricade?
transition to match the way the street is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, it
So
won't-
that's a yes, it slopes.
it does slope, yes.
Okay, I mean, it's something for the city. Bobby, have you
Right
thought
now,
about
they
that?
do. They go down the hill.
Actually, we've actually gone out and walked it.
Okay,
and
what do you
looked
think?
at it, and that's a part of why we said don't do the improvements clear down through the intersection. It is too challenging.
But do you think it's safe to stop it right there? Do you think that's going to be, it's going
I
to be
think
okay?
with proper, there are signs we will put up,
to,
sidewalk ends ahead,
yeah.
pedestrian ends, whatever. And the type 3 barricade is significant enough. We have it at other places within the city
Okay.
that it doesn't.
That'll stop a
create-
kid flying down on a skateboard, maybe.
He's
Most
been-
likely it'll stop the kid. Yes.
Not the skateboard.
The other,
That's good.
if a kid's
Suddenly, it will stop it.
Yeah.
yeah, it'll probably stop most people. I think it's more important to understand that the idea is that the connectivity that's going to create is when we get the through traffic.
Oh, yeah.
the
Oh, no, I'm not
intersection
about-
squared away.
I think it's awesome. I'm just thinking about when it's there and it's not finished, it's going to be an unfinished pathway to
We have the same condition.
green zone.
We have the same condition existing right now with Daybreak subdivision where the
Right.
sidewalk ends.
Well, but
We have that.
But that's flat. This is like,
We have other areas where we have the
Where
same
it's
thing
sloped.
where it's steep and the sidewalk just sort of goes away.
but we're going to have lights all the way down to that intersection. Is that right? Even the intersection is going to have some lights put in.
We're going to have the lighting along the street frontage, developed frontage.
Right.
The intersection, we're going to put up another light.
Okay.
We're going to require another light at the intersection, Cobra head type light at the intersection to light the intersection. Between the
Temporary.
two,
Yeah. Okay.
there's not enough room to do it. There's drainage, there's severe grades.
Right.
It just seems too much of an ask to make that connection.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not trying to ask for something that's. I'm just thinking about safety and nice sidewalk and
There will be
and
lighting, there will be
Yeah.
barricades.
It'll be one of those neighborhood things that kids will have to just watch out for. So thank you.
Can I ask or make a comment that really is totally away from any of all of this in terms of what's going to be built here, the houses that are going to be built here? The code allows you to build 2 and 2.5 story houses, and I'm looking forward to seeing a 2.5 story house. I would like to make an appeal to the developer to give serious consideration to a percentage of these houses be 1-story houses. And my appeal is based on the fact that we know in Sherwood that the 2 fastest growing elements of our population are seniors and young couples starting out. More and more of us Sherwoodians are aging out of our houses, 2-story houses. We're losing them because there are not enough 1-story houses for them to buy in Sherwood, to stay in Sherwood. The added benefit, of course, of a 1-story house with a senior in this newly developed community is they're not going to be adding kids to the school, or it's unlikely that they will be adding. You never know. There's always hope. The other aspect, of course, is affordability of housing in Sherwood. It just seems logical to me that a 1-story house is less expensive than a 2-story house. And we need to do more in our community to have affordable housing, especially affordable housing for young couples starting out. Now, of course, a young couple starting out is going to add to the school eventually, but again, there's always hope. So there's nothing we can do in our code now that mandates that you do this. But I just ask that you give consideration to this appeal, because we here on the Planning Commission are charged with the job of planning for Sherwood. And we need to address the needs of this 2 significant segments of our population. And we don't usually get, and we're getting less and less of you, opportunities of a large development because we're running out of developable land, as we've discussed time and time again. And we don't have anything that requires you to do it. I'm just making an appeal based on the logic that I have and the reasons that I've given you to give significant consideration to doing that.
Well, I do have probably a bit of information for you. The likely home builder that will be working in this area has heard from market forces that there is a type of living that is attractive that you're describing. And it is part of what I don't think people always see is that some of these homes are designed to live as a one-story structure, but they have two-story space to them. So that you've got bonus rooms, visitor space, storage space in the second story. So homes are being accommodated or designed to accommodate one-story living, even though they have a two-story footprint. It's also, I understand the perception that one story might be more affordable, but the cost of the land stays the same. So your cost per square foot goes up. And so when a consumer is looking at one house that costs more per square foot and it sure lives the same as one that is less per square foot, sometimes they look at the metrics differently. But the consumers that are looking at houses are they are interested in different lifestyle configurations. There are multi-generational family structures, and the homes are being designed to accommodate that, particularly when you've got large enough lots that you can have a double suite, like I said, a multi-generational footprint. So that's not always visible from the street, but it is definitely something that the home building industry is hearing in the marketplace. So it's not terribly pertinent to the land use application, but you raised valid questions, and I just wanted you to hear that part of it.
And I wanted you to hear my appeal.
Yep. I've just been handed a blue form, but this is out of order. We've already asked for the applicant review, so I'm looking towards staff. I don't see our legal counsel to see how to proceed, because I don't know technically what I'm supposed to do.
You could poll the commission as to whether or not they want to reopen the public hearing to allow for additional public comment, and the applicant to see if they would want to rebut that. Otherwise, you have your opportunity to speak. If you don't take it at that time, then it's ultimately up to the commission to decide.
It's early. I'm fine.
We've been very accommodating all along.
We're a friendly group, and we will give you additional rebuttal time, not limit you to the time that's left if something's brought up. But as I take this opportunity to allow people to turn in the blue cards, if we could have them all turned in now, and we'll take any additional testimony if anybody else want to submit blue cards, so we can get additional proponents or opponents on right now. All right, Barbara, I've done so well with last names already. Bennick.
Well, I didn't plan on speaking, but I had some questions, and I apologize because we weren't, even though we're neighbors of this, we didn't attend some of the meetings, and now I'm going, oh my gosh. And so I live on Elwert Road, 21615 Southwest Elwert Road, and when we initially attended some informational sessions about this, there wasn't going to be any outlet onto Elwert Road. And now I see that there is, and that there are 22 properties that will be accessing that. And I know that other people in the audience have great concerns over the traffic. We live there, I have to cross it every day to get the newspaper, to get the mail. And the traffic is just really needs to be a big consideration. It's, a woman was killed up the road until we've got the housing development right across from us now, and until they did their setback, and we had to have them move our mailbox 3 times so that I'd have a safe way to get across. And I don't know, I just look at this development, and I'm an other, not a proponent or an opponent, but I really think that you need to be cognizant of the traffic on Elward.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Yes. Anthony? Or Tony?
Yeah, Anthony Bevel, Southwest Linden in Sherwood. I heard, a phrase that just drives me mad. I've heard it a couple of times in, the Planning Commission. Acceptable. Acceptable to whom? Traffic congestion. Who's it acceptable? If you live there, you wouldn't think it was acceptable. So I'd advise anyone, I don't know if this is a standard parlance for planning or traffic or whatever, but when you say acceptable, you look residents who live there in the eye and say, hey, this is acceptable. Yeah, okay, yeah, right. So, I'm not grandstanding, but it kind of PO'd me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. We have an opportunity for the applicant to rebut the two testimonies provided, and traffic being...
Michael Ard, again, for the record. So starting with Barbara's comments regarding Elwert Road. Elwert Road is an arterial classification. It has a 45 mile per hour posted speed, so it is intended to carry high volumes of traffic and at fairly high speeds. This project isn't going to significantly change the culture of that roadway. However, I will note that with development occurring adjacent to the roadway, it does provide a little bit of massing adjacent to the roadway. And anytime that you provide something that either looks like enclosure that visually narrows the roadway or has a context that signals the need to travel slower, such as adjacency to residential development, you tend to see speeds decrease. So it may be possible as future development occurs, with this being a contributing factor, to reevaluate the speed limit on Elward Road and reduce that. It's not something that we can do in advance of this project, but it is something that we can look at in the future.
And is that something that the residents would petition Washington County to have the speed limit?
It certainly can be done that way, yes, at the request of residents. It isn't something that automatically happens because of a resident request, and typically the speeds are set through the Oregon State Speed Control Board, and they are primarily based on the actual speed of traveling traffic on the roadway. It is presumed that 85% of drivers on the road are driving at a speed that is reasonable and prudent, and that 15% of drivers are crazy idiots that need corrective action, that need the police to step in and issue a citation. So that is the primary consideration, and that's why it's so important that the culture along the roadside change in order to initiate the change in the speed limit. With that said, I'd also like to make a comment regarding Mr. Bevel's objection to the word acceptable. And as I'm sure that you guys on the Planning Commission are aware, within the state of Oregon, the approval or denial of these applications is required to be on the basis of objective approval criteria. In other words, there is a specific standard that we look at that is either met or is not met. So when I use the word acceptable, what I mean is that it meets the objective approval standard. And as a result of that, you can't just decide that I don't like it, I have a personal feeling about this, that I'm uncomfortable. The objective standard is met.
When is that objective standard reviewed?
That standard is part of the city's transportation system plan and its development code. So the city has the purview to change what those standards are and what they're based on, really. A lot of jurisdictions are moving away from level of service as a standard to deal with volume to capacity ratio instead, just because there are benefits to the community associated with that. And it also allows some congestion to occur without indicating that there is a problem, as long as that's safe. Clackamas County is engaged in that change right now.
Actually, I thought we changed to volume and capacity and delay time, which, that being aside, is probably not.
Just as an aside, we actually take up both. We apply the V over C ratio because the VLRC tells you basically what the capacity of the roadway is between point A and point B. It's like a pipe with water in it. It tells you how full it can operate at. The level of service tells you how an intersection interacts with traffic. So the longer you sit, the longer you wait at the intersection, that gives you a higher level of service, A, B, C, D. D being, F being you're dead in the water, it stops. A being flow through easy. So we apply both just because it gives us a better handle to say objectively for level of service, is waiting at a traffic signal on 12th and Sherwood Road and Highway 99 for 5 minutes to get through acceptable or not? Even though it has the capacity to flow a whole bunch of cars through there, but you have to wait 5 minutes to get that much going through it. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, there's a flip side to that coin too, in that if the city decides that they want their standards to be very high, that they want to achieve level of service C or better everywhere and never use more than 75% of the intersection capacity, then your transportation system plan needs to be designed to accommodate that, and your capital improvement plan needs to be designed to accommodate that, and suddenly you're talking about mountains of dollars and lots of pavement to address those concerns. So there is a balance that has to be struck as well.
I have a follow-up question. And then the other one, are you going to address the access directly onto Elwart?
I am. Within the application, the giant notebook that you received, Exhibit F is the neighborhood meeting documentation. And the plan has evolved since that neighborhood meeting. As I described, we worked with staff. It was an iterative process. But there has always been access shown on Elwart Road. It was originally shown for a traditional cul-de-sac. We actually think the new design is preferable, but there is no way to access the island of land along Elwart without an access. We did have to get approval from Washington County to allow that, and we did, but it has always been shown in the plans. So I'm sorry if there was any confusion, but it was on the plans and documented. So.
Okay, and I see that from the neighborhood meeting that was first held, but it may have been on the map prior to the crossing. There was originally going to be a road going across where the pedestrian bridge was, and at that time it was assumed that that site would be accessed across.
It may have been one of the early community plans as opposed to an AKS plan.
It was the concept plan when this. Prior to the schools being developed, there was a pie in the sky vision that a road could be cut across.
Yeah, that plan also included the other zoning that was
neighborhood
that was changed.
Right. And due to many reasons, that had to be removed, and a whole other hearing. All right.
So the numbers that you guys gave at the peak times earlier in your presentation, were those numbers of trips that are added to the current? That's what's projected? It's just an added number?
Yes, that's correct. As traffic engineers, we have kind of a weird way of considering a trip. If you leave your home and go to a store, we actually count that as 2 trips, one leaving your home and one arriving at the store. So the trips are separated into trips that are departing the residential area and trips that are arriving at the residential area. And during the PM peak hour, there would be 86 trips in total, considering both of those.
Additional trips?
Yes.
Additional trips?
Yes. Yeah, it works out to about 1 trip per home during the evening peak hour and a little bit less than that during the morning peak hour.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I think we've asked as many questions as we can ask.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, so we will close the public hearing and ask for any final comments by staff. And that was really loud, and I'm sorry.
I don't have any comments unless you have specific questions that I can circle back to or not.
The discussion the Scrivener errors and comments that I made are incorporated in a document that the applicant had. asking now after I've closed the hearing, but here goes the chicken, here comes the egg. That's a question. So the Scrivener errors and updates and corrections, this applicant had an opportunity to review? No? They're minor and not substantive, so so we can get them on the record.
Sure. So on page 28 of the report, the last sentence of the first finding was an incomplete sentence, and you asked that we add language, so I put, as discussed and conditioned throughout the report, the proposed development can satisfy this criterion. Close that sentence.
And give the applicant just a moment to. 28 of the packet.
It's 5 of 48 of your report. But from here on forth, I will only refer to the packet number, which would be 28.
Is that what the applicant has? Okay.
Where are you at? That wasn't one she added. I just pointed it out to you. Oh. On page 31, there was a Scrivener's error where it says the
first finding.
Yeah, the first finding, the second sentence, as proposed, all 68 lots, it should be 86 lots. On page 62, actually, is a staff recommendation that you remove the condition, and it would be subsequently back in the back too. The condition reads, improvements to the vegetative corridor shall be constructed with the first phase of development to be constructed west of Southwest Copper Terrace, phase 2, 3, or 4. When in fact, the phasing of that is dependent on the service provider letter. So there is language in there that they have to meet the service provider letter, and it specifically calls out the service provider letter number. So we would propose that condition be removed just as an unnecessary condition. You're welcome to keep it if you feel so inclined.
So that's D39, which is a duplicate. Is that what you're saying?
It's not a duplicate. It's just that we require that the applicant, if you look at condition number 70, the developer shall continually comply with standards of clean water services and the requirements of the service provider letter. 15-003-302 dated November 24th, 2015.
Got it.
So it's kind of a redundant. They have to meet that condition, the service provider letter, and so there's no need for the condition that they meet it.
So we can remove condition number 39 and renumber.
Correct, and that's what I would do. And then I couldn't. I looked right at it. I'm sure. Maybe it's on this side. It's related to conditions 11 and 12. So the condition 11 read, prior to the issuance, and I'm on page 65, prior to the issuance of any building permits for the site, the applicant shall provide a final grading permit that demonstrates compliance with this section. And so I've replaced with section 16.128.030, which is the specific section that deals with grading and erosion control permits in our code.
It's page 51.
It's page 51 and on page 65, condition number 11.
The staff report analysis is on page 51, right?
Which is probably why I had that there. And
there you go.
Yeah. So the next condition down was also an incomplete sentence, and I added the word obtained in the second sentence. The applicant shall also obtain a stormwater connection permit from Clean Water Services. And that concludes those comments.
My other comment was on page 31, that the analysis by staff on page 31 regarding the setbacks does not address the reduced rear yard setbacks that are discussed later in the
So, yeah, and I just didn't have my yellow flags down here. So when we were talking, yeah, I'm perfectly okay with that. The code, we talk about it later in there about the reduced setbacks. What Commissioner Simpson is asking is that we add language which makes total sense to the condition that specifically calls out those lots that would have the reduced setbacks, and add language to the finding that's similar to that, that refers back to the back of.
So for the applicant's purposes, when I read the setback standards on page 8 or page 31, it said that you were going to meet all of those, but then later in the staff report, we address reduced setbacks, and I thought it would be appropriate to reference 16-144-030 that is conditioned and analyzed later in the report so that they tie together. That's why I'm paid big bucks for Scrivener errors.
We're getting a raise?
I know.
By the way, the Planning Commission is not paid.
Yes.
Yeah.
We get a free chocolate candy bar. So we're all volunteers, yes. We should be clear on that. All right. So any other questions of staff regarding SUB 15-01? All right. And does the commission have a general consensus regarding the Scrivener errors and changes that the staff just provided to us?
I find them highly acceptable.
Okay, so we've got a general nod. Is there then a motion?
Russell, do your thing.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for SUB 15-01 Mandel Farm subdivision based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis finding and conditions in the staff report with the modifications discussed previously in this meeting. Is that everything?
Second.
All right,
There we
it's
go.
been moved and seconded that we approve SUB 15-01 Mandel subdivision. Any further comments regarding the application? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Application passed. Thank you very much for your time. And then we are at the end of our meeting. Any planning commissioner announcements?
We have one. We picked a musical finally. Yay! We're doing My Fair Lady this summer in the park.
All right, fabulous. Fabulous.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I don't want to take up a lot of time. I don't know if we didn't discuss this, but a bunch of us went to a big meeting in Portland, and all of us got together and divided up where we would go to. This was the New Partners for Smart Growth Conference, and it was very good. And I think all of us went there and came back out of it with a lot of information that was helpful. Just as a personal aside, most of the conversations and studies are based on old cities and the problems that the old cities, declining cities, cities that need renovation face. None of this applies to Sherwood. We're a young city, growing city, with different problems. However, since I've been quoted a couple of times recently, I'll give you another one of my favorite expressions. What's the difference between a smart person and a wise person? A smart person learns from their mistake. Wise people learn from the mistakes of others. What we heard were a lot of mistakes that other cities have made through their aging, growth, and development. Mistakes that Sherwood can avoid and learn from. That's why we're here. That's why Gene and I represented planning. That's why the city council was there. That's why Julia was there. We learned a lot. And I know that we will apply what we've learned to future meetings, future discussions, and future developments that we face for Sherwood. Because we all want the same thing for Sherwood. We want Sherwood to be the best place in the world to live, which it already is. I don't care if we come on 4th or 6th or 3rd on these ratings. One of the fun things that happened is I went to the AARP Livability Index thing, and I happened to meet the mayor of Wilsonville, and we were comparing notes. And Wilsonville gets the same score as Sherwood on the AARP Livability Index. I'd hell of a lot rather live here in Sherwood. And I looked at him and I said, really? We're the same? And he said, well, yeah. Okay, no, we're not. So a lot of these tools are interesting. They're developmental tools. They're tools that help me analyze things, what I'd like to see done here. But they're just tools. But we can use them. We need to use them. And the fact that Sherwood, bless their heart, paid for me to go and attend to this and learn and hopefully bring back knowledge that'll help us, and I know Gene feels the same way, that we were grateful that you allowed us to do this. And my only hope is, unfortunately, the next one will be in St. Louis, and I don't want to go to St. Louis. I grew up in Chicago. We don't like St. Louis, and I don't want to go visit St. Louis. But I hope if they ever come back to Portland, we get to go again. They did it every 12 years. I don't know if I'll be around in 12 years. Next time they come back, I urge everybody who can to go to these things. You learn a lot.
Thank you very much. And I did send an email to Brad and Julie, and I hope it got forwarded to Mayor Clark. I went to High Touch, High Tech, which was an opportunity to find free tools available for communities to provide citizen involvement. And we all know about the charrette where you can go put stickers on panels. But the first thing that we did when we walked into the room, we were told to text hi to a number. And just a few minutes into the presentation, those that texted in were given 4 questions to answer, and the responses were immediately available. Can you imagine if we had a work session and people were to text in and give their responses as they walk into the meeting, or it's on a newspaper or in the Sherwood Gazette, we're texting, and the software, you can send out a couple of questions and then they can respond with text answers. And so we can engage people with text messages, and they had 3 other ones that I won't go into time to explain them, but they're open source software where people can be engaged with mapping tools or survey responses. That I just thought it was really a good opportunity for us to try and find new ways to get citizens to. I was thinking medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, and if they could text in what they're feeling, it would be helpful.
College classes, basically.
And
no, they do.
Yeah.
I mean, college classes. What they call those. So the instructor can see everyone's opinion. Are we still on? Are we still on? They have those in college classes where they can show all their opinions as they're going through.
Oh, that would be fabulous. So we could start taking the pulse of the community.
iClick or something they call it.
Very nice. And then there was they call plenary speaker, plenary. Michael Mickleby, and they sent out an email just recently that all the speakers' podcasts are going to be available on the website March 13th. And I'll say from a personal opinion, he changed my perspective of what I thought smart growth would mean to us as a community, all the way to the national level, that if as a nation we could come up with a strategic plan that everybody was pulling forward with the same idea, we could leave this country a better place than we left it last generation. And he was a fabulous, fabulous speaker who, I don't know, maybe it was 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe. He wrote a document under the pseudonym with another. He was in the military and he worked through the Pentagon under Mr. Y. But the way he sells it and the way he explains it and the way it puts to what we are doing at a planning level, how important it is for smart growth to make a difference in this country is amazing. It absolutely is eye-opening experience to how we all can't just think of smart growth as putting solar panels on houses. It's the ability to walk in a walkable neighborhood so that, you know, energy, resources, all the things that we have are used to the best possible maximum capacity. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So I see, yeah, head nodding. So if you get a chance to see this
It
plenary,
was very energizing.
wasn't it?
He was.
So was he, yes.
Yeah, the whole topic.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my comment on that. So with that, I don't see anybody else with other announcements. We will adjourn. Thank you. Bless.
What do you want to do?
And I hope that we're able to accommodate that with this project.
I think it holds the revitalization of Old Town, basically getting the Old Town back to be what it used to be.